Welcome back to Performance Process, the podcast that breaks down the processes behind the world's best performances so that you can apply them to your own riding. Now, that's been the tagline of this podcast since its inception, and throughout the 2 years this has been running, we've looked at the process behind various elements of training, nutrition, supplements, aero testing. God knows we've covered aero testing. In this episode, we're covering the process of bringing all those processes together. This is a story of how we tried to apply the performance process philosophy to the Irish Time Trial Championships this year. It was a chance for me to sink my teeth into optimizing someone else's process, and that someone else is joining me today. That is Marcus Christie, a long-time friend of mine. I think, Marcus, may be better just to bring you on here because I was once told that I should start every podcast with a bit of a lighthearted moment or a joke. But I think if we start getting into some of the lighthearted stories that you and I could share, we could be here all day.
We definitely could, Ronan. Yeah, it would be interesting. What lighthearted story do you want to start with?
I suppose we have to mention the fact that you introduced me to my wife. Twice.
Yeah, I did. That was a funny night, wasn't it?
That was the same night that we somehow managed to trick you into taking 4 small blue pills.
It is, definitely, yeah. I remember it well.
There's a couple of other stories, a couple of other crashes and training incidents and training camps and all sorts that we could want to share.
I'm sure there's more than you that could tell a few stories about me, but yeah.
It's all good. All good. We're here today to talk about the Time Trial Championships this year and sort of the process that we took to trying to optimize your attempt at the Time Trial Nationals. Before we get into that, I think we should maybe bring listeners who aren't aware of who you are, Marcus. I think everybody in Ireland knows your time trialing pedigree, but for listeners further afield, maybe we should bring them up to speed just on some of your own background, who you are, how you get into cycling, how long you've been cycling, and some of the achievements that you've ticked off down through the past close to 20 years now. You've been racing, I think.
Has it been that long? I know. Crazy. Time flies.
Yeah, you weren't always a cyclist. You were a strong runner in secondary school and sort of forced onto the bike.
Yeah. Started off playing football and then found athletics in secondary school and was going quite well at that over middle distance, 800, 1500 meters and 3000 meters. And then I developed a bad ankle injury and that kind of forced my hand into cycling. It was Tommy Evans that really got me into cycling with the talent identification testing that he did back in 2008, I think it was. I was kind of like fast tracked onto the Irish track squad with the likes of Martin Irvine, Matt Bramier, David O'Loughlin. Yeah, I had a good engine from athletics, but really had no bike handling skills. So, I mean, it was baptism of fire to start with. And I was more like Crash Bandicoot than a cyclist, but even went flying over a bridge. But
that one made the local papers.
It did. I don't know how, but
I think it was when the fisherman had to be fished out of the river after trying to save you that it made the.
It was like trying to find the Titanic as well. That dawn, resurrected like 6 months later.
I'll maybe explain that one. The bike that you crashed over the wall of a bridge into a flooded river, or a river that was about to burst its banks. A fisherman did fish you from the river. In the process, I think took a heart attack himself. The bike that you had at first you were reluctant to let go of it. Let's put it that way. And eventually, it was either kind of you were saved or you and the bike were lost.
So that's pretty much it. Yeah,
the bike was lost, but it did, as you said, it was found some 6 months later or something.
Yeah, thankfully I made the right call eventually to grab the coat and let the bike go.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I wanted to bring in your background there just because it gets to something that you've struggled throughout your career, and that is injuries. It was injuries that got you onto the bike, but injuries also have sort of, I don't want to say plagued, but they've disrupted your career on the bike throughout. And I mean, you raised up to continental ranks with Am Post, as you know, some Irish riders do, but you've also been to World Championships time trial, Commonwealth Games time trial, got some nice results along the way. You've medalled in the time trial championships that we were preparing for this year. You've medalled in that event previously. And so, yeah, you've quite the successful career in terms of time trialing. At least you have national records and all sorts.
Yeah, I mean, the injuries definitely plagued my career, I would say. It was probably, again, coming from that ankle where it's always like a biomechanical issue when you get to the elite end, and if you're not like 100% finely tuned, then you get found out. I would say that's probably a big part of it, but no, as you say, it was good representing Ireland at the World Championships and the time trial and getting a few medals at nationals and getting the Irish 25, 50 and 100 record. Pity we couldn't get the 10 this year, but I wanted that full set. But yeah, that's pretty much it, really. Just kind of a time trial writer, apart from a brief spell with On Post and a few results at the Tour de Bessèges back in the day.
Yeah, your first race with On Post.
Started with a bang, and then that was it.
another baptism of fire, I think it's safe to say. Let's say unfamiliar with the ways of pro racing, which was kind of a blessing in disguise, because when the break was gone and most people had accepted the fact that the break was gone and there was no getting into it that day, you sort of said, well, I'm going to just ride across to it. And I mean, you've never been short on power, let's put it that way. Your engine is, I think it's legendary within Irish cycling, some of the power numbers that you can sustain, and I think your other major talent is that you don't really feel pain. And so having a strong engine and a weak sense of pain, let's put it that way, good combination to have.
Yeah, for that day it came in handy, definitely.
I mean, long story short, we go way, way back. You're not new to a bike either, but despite all that, we've kind of, I think, what I was going to say is we've never worked together to try to approach a goal previously. And I think that's because we've both come from, or we've both had sort of opposite belief systems. I think it's maybe fair to say that you were never a huge fan of Dan Bigham, put it that way. You weren't big on the aerodynamics. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's always like, if you can't grasp something yourself, you're just reluctant to buy into it, aren't you? And I probably had too much of a belief that an individual time trial was just more about like brute force and power rather than looking at marginal gains and aerodynamic side of things. And that was obviously a mistake on my part, and probably should have listened to you a lot sooner.
I don't know if we'll go that far now, but I mean, just on that point, I mean, like our mates who were part of this also have sort of suggested that we do something like this previously, and I don't think you were ready for it, but I don't think I was also ready to go down the path that we have. So much of what we applied this year, I've only learned from others in the past 12 months or so. So it's not like this opportunity existed before, or it's not like I'm an expert either. I'm merely just copying what others are doing and applying it.
No, it was an exciting journey, and I learned a lot, and I think we got along well with it as well. I mean, it wasn't like we were arguing on what to do or anything like that.
No, you fully committed. I'll give you that much. Do you want to maybe just talk us through like what was the catalyst for that change this year? Like, why were you previously so focused on power and had this belief system that power could overcome any other deficits, and this year you like completely flipped and went all in on everything else?
I think it was just the last few years, like from 21, when I was still the last time I got to the World Championships, I was just riding basically on power and an old school Bradley Wiggins setup from 2012. So obviously that was quite a good year results wise for me, and I thought that my belief system was right then. But since that year, I've been doing like the same numbers, if not more, and like falling 5th, 6th at the nationals, and looking at riders' powers ahead of me, and like the numbers were way lower. And I just obviously, that was just proof in the pudding to me in time that like, if it wasn't going to change, then I was going to stay 6th. And what's Einstein's quote about doing the same thing over and over again? Yeah. So when you presented this opportunity to me, it was like, I've got to take it, otherwise I'm missing a trick for sure. And the game's changed massively, I think, in the last 5 years. It's now just, you have to look at every aspect, and if you don't, then you're not going to be competitive.
Yeah, I mean, I was at that I wasn't there with you. I was there working for Cycling Tips back then, but I was at that World Championships in 2021 and covering the Irish team's day at the time. So it was yourself and Ryan Mullen.
You were in the car following me, weren't you?
I was in the car following you, yeah. And somehow you remember more about that than I do.
I just remember you coming towards me at the end and you were like, oh, great ride, man. And I was like, yeah, and I was just a bit disillusioned at the finish because I knew, like, I was on a good ride numbers wise, but you just know when you're not moving that fast. Well, you just know where you're going to finish at the end of the day. But yeah, I just remember you coming up at the finish. I don't know, weirdly it was in my mind.
Speak to me about that for a bit. Just like having the power, but seeing the game, so to speak, change over the last few years, and knowing that, you know, you're stronger than other riders, but you're not faster, and like the mental sort of, yeah, just how that affects you.
It's like, it does kind of make you, I don't know if resent's the right word, but you just be like, in my head, I thought the time trial was like the race of truth. And then when you realize that it's not completely physical anymore, you just think it's not the race of truth anymore. And you become like stuck in your ways more. And yeah, just a bit disillusioned. And it does take someone like you to try and convince you and open your eyes that there's ways and means around it. But if you hadn't have given me this opportunity this season, I still would have either not competed or competed old school, because obviously it's not just a case of believing in methods. It's either you've got a great opportunity with Ridley and yourself, or you have to spend a huge load of money, which is the other side of the coin. It's a bit of a cross between like physical capacity and like F1 kind of aerodynamics now, isn't it?
And I think that's where, you know, the opposite end of the equation that you were on was, so you were, you know, power was everything and trying to maximize your power. And when that wasn't enough, the solution was to get more power. Whereas some people sit on the other end of that and they try to optimize their marginal gains to the nth degree. And when they still don't win a time trial, it's like, well, what more marginal gains are on offer? What else can I do? And actually the answer is somewhere in the middle. It takes to be one of the best time trialists in the world, to be one of the best time trialists in your country even, it takes the best power and the best aero. And it's the combination of, not the best of either, but it's the, whoever has the best combination, I think, is what I'm saying.
It's only now that you can appreciate that Boardman and O'Brien were so far ahead of their times, really.
Mm-hmm.
Because looking back, it looks like they were the only ones that were dialed into the aerodynamics back then. If you look at the pictures of Injurin and riders like that, it's crazy.
Yeah, there were a few more factors at play back then also.
You could say that again, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't, there were ways that you could develop more watts, let's put it that way, to overcome the aero drag. But yeah, like a conversation we've had a couple of times this year is like, as each year the speeds increase, the importance of, you know, just optimizing your aerodynamics in some way is more and more important, because yeah, the higher the speeds, the more the aerodynamic drag. It's not like a linear relationship, it's an exponential thing. So yeah, we've talked about why at the speeds that time trialing is getting to now, aero is even more important versus 15, 20 years ago when you started. You know, power maybe was the bigger factor because the speeds were sub 50k an hour and
yeah.
55.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a whole other planet. So we've mentioned this process that we went through a few times. Perhaps now is a good time just to actually lay out what it was for the listening audience. And I think we sat down. We didn't even sit down. You were in Mallorca all winter.
Yeah.
The last time I had seen you was actually myself and the other two participants in this WhatsApp group, Aaron Dean and Philip Degnan. The three of us were in Mallorca for Philip's 40th birthday, and you were there leading tour guides and that, but you happened to be doing a race at the same time. And so the last time I had seen you was the night after you'd just won a stage of a pretty big stage race over in Mallorca. You were there for the winter, home for Christmas and that sort of thing. But it wasn't until, I don't know, maybe March time that, I can't remember how it came up, but it was maybe a bit of slagging back and forth, and then it was
in the group chat banter, yeah.
And then we said, right, are we going to do this? And you said, yes, let's do it. And then we kind of laid out like some key focus areas. And if I remember right, they were like, obviously looking at training because that's going to be important. But then looking also at things like training specifically for a time trial versus just training. We were obviously going to look at your equipment, your position on the bike. We were going to look at pre-race recons and sort of simulations, not stimulations, Marcus, simulations.
Not snooze.
Not that either. We were going to look at some aero testing, of course. We were going to look at, how you go about executing on race day. We were also going to look at sort of, pacing strategies, tapering plans, all that sort of thing. Which gets us into this podcast here today. And I have a list here of things that we had done to sort of keep us on track for this episode. But perhaps it may be best to start with just asking you, like, what part of the process and which part of each of those key focus areas was most sort of surprising or new or enlightening, or whatever term we want to use, of the whole process to you? Which part of the process really stuck out to you? Maybe that's the part we start with.
Probably just your insistence that every minute I spent training was on the time trial bike in the position.
Yeah.
Well, that took a while to get my head around. And then I would say enlightening part would have been trying to actually hold a proper aero position in a time trial race effort, which was harder than I anticipated. Then I could really appreciate that was a talent in itself, because even in the past when I thought I was holding a decent position, I was basically like a kite. So to hold it properly, you're redlining the side of like aero with safety, I would say, because like to do it properly, you basically can't see, and that's something I just struggled to get my head around. But you came up with a great system, which is obviously used in the professional ranks, where when we did a race simulation or a proper race effort at nationals or whatever, we were radioed up, and then that gave me the confidence that I could dial it in.
You might have had the confidence, but I didn't.
I remember the cat's eyes in that race simulation.
That
was the first time we did it, wasn't it?
Yeah, you kind of, what I learned in that, so we did a recon ride, we did a test event, so to speak, but locally we found a course that somewhat replicated pretty similar to what the Nationals course was going to be. Same distance, same total elevation change, but not quite in the same way. But anyway, it was as close as we could get locally here. And we went out to do a test ride that night. And that, I think the learning I took from that was that you take things quite literally.
That's fair to say.
And so when I said down the radio, go to the white line, I think I said white line.
Yeah.
And you, went right on top of the white line, had a cat's eye at 60 odd km, and I thought it was all about to end there and then. Thankfully it didn't, because you kept the whole thing upright. Yeah, like that's, you said there, you took confidence from that. The real, not surprising part, but the interesting thing to me was like, you totally flipped. Like before, you weren't interested in aero really at all. You obviously wore a skin suit, you wore an aero helmet, and you used a time trial bike. But in terms of holding position, optimizing position and all that, you were pretty comfortable in the position you had. And then while at first I had to sort of convince you to try this new way, you then bought so far into it beyond what I was trying to get to, that I was constantly having to try to remind you you do need to see some element of where you're going. You can't totally rely on the radio. So yeah, that was, I guess, we should also lay out the fact that, we started this process with, you've had the same time trial bike for about 10 years or so now. It is a bike that previously belonged to Bradley Wiggins, Panarello Bolide from his Team Sky days.
Yeah.
And I think the only thing changed from when Wiggins rode it would have been to adapt to your saddle height.
Yeah, basically.
So there hadn't really been any optimization done in terms of your front end position. It was kind of, let's get on this thing and go, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even train on it. It was just pull it out and race day, and away I went. So, yeah, it was a complete flip around when we started doing this project.
That was one of the key challenges we faced at first as well, is because I wanted you training on time trial bike in time trial position as much as possible. We knew there was going to be a new bike. We'll get to that part of the process in a second. But initially you just had that time trial bike. And so you only had your race wheels, which were tubular. You only had, the 1x60, 50,
58.
58. And so training on that thing, bearing in mind it was like an almost 13-year-old time trial bike at this point with rim brakes.
Oh yeah, I mean you felt every bump in the road in that thing. It just shows you how bad the roads are in the north these days. But yeah, I hated going out in that training. Yeah, it was a death trap.
The brakes would have been the scary part for me.
Oh, there was no brakes.
You had the sole of your shoes. What more do you?
Yeah, I mean, brakes slow you down, don't they? If the traffic lights hammering on orange, you just have to accelerate. You know.
Yes, again, not in filling me with confidence here, Marcus. But I mean, we still were able to do so much with that bike.
Oh yeah, it was brilliant. We had that at that point because it just kept everything alive, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
We done the stimulation on that bike the first time. And even the small tweaks you made on the turbo before we actually got the main bike, it kind of showed us that we could make massive gains.
And that was a real learning moment for me as well, because like I still appreciate that to be certain of any aero tweaks or any aero changes, you need to test them. But actually there was so much low hanging fruit with yourself there that it was almost going to be, you know, if ever the eyeball wind tunnel, as it's called, was going to be useful, it was there, because it was almost a blank canvas. You were sort of, you know, you were closer to a road position than a time trial position, and so just, you know, we were able to make some tweaks that I think already, you know, made a significant difference.
I would definitely say Remco's road position was more aero than my time trial position.
Remco's a heck of a lot shorter than you are, Marcus.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was just from a bike fit here in the, you know, we're sitting here in the same garage today recording this podcast, but that was eyeballing it, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know, speak to me about that then. You know, you had this time trial position for the guts of 10 years.
Yeah.
We made minor tweaks, but which had significant differences. How did you then find the adaptation period to get used to that? Was there an adaptation period?
I suppose it was like you just had another thing to think about, whereas before I would just try and keep my head relatively low and just follow the Garmin and chase numbers. But now it was more like about taking glances. So I was looking at the Garmin, but to hold the position that we required to go fast enough, you had to like not fully see the Garmin. So it was like every few seconds you were thinking of holding your head down in that aero tuck, and there were a few seconds you were trying to check on the Garmin and the road ahead. It broke the time trial up because you had to think about more things, obviously, and it was definitely more painful on the body because you were really closing in on a big frame that I have. So it was just a different dynamic, probably.
Yeah, the thing that really stands out in my mind from that bike fit evening and from the first couple of rides and stuff that we did was like nobody had ever told you to try to shrug your shoulders to your ears.
Oh yeah.
Which, I mean, yeah, nobody had ever told you, so that how are you supposed to know? But that is one of the biggest things that you can do to, you know, improve your aero on a time trial bike is just get those shoulders hugged in.
Yeah, so yeah, that was one of the ones where after 10 minutes in the time trial, like that started to bite as much as my lungs because, like, as you know, I've got big shoulders, so there was a lot of shrugging that had to be done. And yeah, it was just a painful experience in general.
And so, like, was it becoming clear to you at that point why it was so important to train on the time trial bike in TT position?
Oh yeah, I mean, I bought into it completely. It probably all fell into place as well because I had that quite serious knee injury from the free 1-2. So, as you know, to be honest, we couldn't train on the road because we went all in for the nationals and we ended up getting the bike from Ridley, so we had to commit. And I mean, I was doing your sessions on the turbo because that's all I could do, and then after 2 days of those, I was crippled and we had to take 2 days off, and it wasn't an ideal prep, but it gave me a real opportunity to focus on trying to nail that position. Like, I thought, I'm doing bike planks basically for 2 hours plus intervals, and when you've got lemons you have to make lemonade, and that's what we did.
Good way to put it. And yeah, so to fill in the gaps there and what you've just disclosed, you were as I said, you're in Mallorca for the winter. You're leading tour guides there, doing big miles and that, and you had, so when we came up with this plan to focus on time trial nationals, I had said to you, well, you need to be at home, you need to be on your time trial bike, and we need to be, training for a time trial. And you had sort of an agreement that you would do the 312, which is the huge sportif / race in Mallorca. And you stayed for the 312. Long story short, you had an upset stomach on the day of the race, and you still managed to roll a top 10.
Yeah, it was, I think it was like the night before. I thought I didn't have any like designated feeders, so I knew the people that race it had like designated feeders.
The people that race it, you mean Alejandro Valverde and the likes?
Yeah, the likes of those people.
Yes.
And I thought, well, the first half of it is severely hilly as well, so worst case scenario is I'm not going to get a feed, and it'll be in the latter like undulating section where hopefully I can get some kind of fuel. So I had gels with me. So the night before I thought I'll just do what Ronan and I did in Girona back in the day and eat about 10 burgers.
We forgot about the time we had an eating competition at the restaurant out of burgers. Yeah, we should have mentioned that.
I'm sorry, sir. There's no more meat in the restaurant. So yeah, I had this food that I rarely eat apart from when I'm hanging out with Ronan and Philip and drinking Duvel. I think my body was just like all this gluten and stuff that it's not used to. It just blocked, and I was hoping that I could have went to the bathroom before the race, which didn't happen. So I was on the start line at like 5:30 or whatever crazy hour it was, and I was like really thinking, I hope my food doesn't just decide that it wants to come up. And obviously I had a few high carb gels in my pocket. And after the first few climbs I started taking the gels and started to feel more and more unwell as Bala was just like taking turns and smashing the front group. And coming up to the last climb, at the top of that, my stomach just went for the first time, and it was like 3 or 4 massive pukes, so it wasn't good. And then I had another 150 kilometers to go to the finish and couldn't really absorb or take anything, so I think I did the whole 3-1-2 and something stupid like 4 gels. Yeah, and then the next day I developed IT band syndrome, and yeah, that kind of didn't help us for the nationals, did it?
Yeah, and the 312, for anybody who doesn't know it, is 312 kilometers. That's where the name comes from. And so you're out there for about 10 hours racing Valverde and the likes on 4 gels and 3 vomits.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, I'm a firm believer that these things are all connected, but lo and behold, the body found a way to stop you. As you said, you developed IT band syndrome. That then scuppered so you came home directly after that. We were planning to commence the time trial plan. Unfortunately, you were injured, and we were trying to manage that throughout. And, it was kind of a case of, you were sort of thinking you were over it. You would have a session, there'd be, a couple of sessions in a row, maybe zero pain. You thought you'd be over it, and then all of a sudden you'd be halfway through a session and it just hit you like a ton of bricks again.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, to be honest, in that period it was painful all the time, but I had to keep your morale up, so.
My morale? Well, I think I was more thinking like, it was, to me, it was nothing to do with, doing this process or getting a bike or, whatever else might have been playing on your mind. For me, it was just like, the time trial is the only thing you're doing this year. You fully committed. I said to you, don't do the Ross, don't do other races in Ireland. And instead of like arguing the point, you were just like, yeah, fully bought in. Okay, I'm not doing the Ross. If you think that's better, I'll not do it. Which might not sound like a lot to many people listening to this podcast. It's a big deal for someone racing in Ireland to just skip the Ross. And so being all in on the nationals, I was like constantly trying to juggle this, like, what's the right thing to do by the person, and what's, and there are actually 2 answers to that. One is to tell them, we need to rest until your knee is better. And the other is, we've only got a few weeks until your goal event. Let's try to manage this as best we can to get through it.
Yeah, and I think we just pushed it to the ragged edge, but we didn't take it over it, and it was, I think it all worked, because you look at the end result and the numbers were way up compared to what we'd been dealing with in the prep, and the knee was sore the day before and the morning of the time trial, but not in the race, so it's like...
Adrenaline is a wonderful...
Oh, well, yeah, adrenaline.
Okay, folks, that's where we're cutting off the free version of this podcast this week. Just a reminder, if you head over to escapecollective.com/member, you can sign up now and you can get the entire podcast uninterrupted. You'll not have me butting in to cut you off or to remind you that you're not yet a member. And in doing so, You will be helping to ensure this podcast continues for many more episodes and months and years to come. So head over escapecollective.com/member now to sign up to Escape Collective and to get the entire episode of Performance Process, along with all of the other podcasts and written content that we publish on our website.